Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Academy World podcast. And today I'm delighted to say I have Nicola with me, and we're going to be talking about difficult conversations in the workplace. So anyhow, welcome, Nicola.
Lovely to be here. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate the opportunity because I think difficult conversations are often avoided in the workplace. And I can remember many a staff survey when they did the employee engagement where employees would say the manager's not dealing with the issues, and it would come up time and time again, and it was because difficult conversations were being avoided.
Well, I'm sure that all our listeners, and I certainly have had experiences where people don't say what they're thinking, or they avoid what they're thinking, and actually what tends to happen, things just get worse.
Yeah, they definitely do. So what you'll often see is there's a fear of conflict, or most obvious reason, and one I see when I do my training, is that people avoid conversations because they're worried about how the other person is going to react, and that seems to come out as a top fear most of the time. So I can understand it because we blow it up in our minds. We think beforehand all the worst scenarios, and then actually when you go in 9 times out of 10, it's nothing like you imagined, is it? So
No, so how do you make an environment somewhere where people feel that they can say appropriately what they're thinking, or to be able to have conversations which they feel is uncomfortable?
So the first thing to do is to plan out that conversation before you even, go into the conversation. And the best model I know for that is AID, which is action. So you work out what actually you want to talk about, what are the actual things that you're seeing, and it can't be personal. It's got to be specific behaviors that you've seen or specific performance. So you start by writing that down. Never do more than 2 or 3 examples, because then you overwhelm a person. They just don't absorb it, and they actually switch off. So, and having had that happen to me, I can tell you definitely do switch off. Yeah. So, and then the I is impact. So what has the actual impact been of the behaviors or the performance that you've had happen? Because when people can relate to that, they're more likely to absorb that lesson. And then D is development or desired behaviour that you want going forward. So you use that to then work out kind of what steps you'd like them to take. But what you do is that's just a prompt for you when you actually go into the conversation. You use it as a discussion point, because clearly if we just tell people what to do, they're not going to do it. They're going to rebel quite naturally. So what we need to do is work with them to collaborate together, which is one of my key messages to everybody, is collaboration is a win-win. It's when you're telling people, or even when you're compromising, you're not winning. Compromising, somebody's losing something and they feel really upset about it. So if you can go in with a collaboration type mindset, you're going to make much more inroads.
Okay, so and does it matter if the guidelines you just gave us is I say manager to worker, or worker to manager, or colleague to colleague, or whatever? Does it matter? Does it apply for everyone?
Yeah, anybody can use this model. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of clients at the moment who have issues with their manager. So they can use this model to still design what the conversation is going to be around and how to take it in. I've also had a lot of business partners who've had the similar thing. And again, they've used the model as well. So you can use it in any scenario, peer to peer. Yeah, because it just helps you, design that conversation and then go in with the right attitude.
So human nature says that when someone annoys you or triggers you somehow, the temptation inside you, isn't it, is to react there and then,
Absolutely.
and almost to walk away is a sign of weakness.
It doesn't
So,
pay.
what is the general view and advice there?
So mine would be to wait till you've cooled down. You can capture on paper all your thoughts, because that will help you start to process it and diffuse it. Do some deep breathing. We kind of go, a lot of people, oh, that's kind of woo woo, but actually breathing properly is essential for our health. And it's interesting because, just sidetracking slightly, but because I think this is an important topic as well, is that I had asthma and I got sent to an asthma physio, and she turns out said to me, I was still working corporately at the time, "You're breathing up here, you're really shallow." It was quite an experience, because she taught me how to deep breathe into my stomach and how to notice when things were getting to me and I was going into my shallow breathing. So when I was stressed, when I was angry, and I really became aware of it. But it was quite an eye opener, because in that session with her, I actually burst into tears. All these tears came out because all the stress I've been carrying, by the deep breathing, it let it out. So deep breathing before, if somebody's making you mad, deep breathe, or concentrate on your fingertips and rub them together and just concentrate on that, to be very mindful, or look at a picture on the wall and really study it, because it distracts your mind and starts to bring the emotions down.
Okay. So don't react is the thing, and if you're ever going to have a conversation which is you feel uncomfortable, I mean, I've always suggested to people that don't never have a conversation unless you feel comfortable, in the sense of, you feel, when I say comfortable, I feel like you as an individual are in control. So you're not rushing against the clock, and you've had a drink and whatever, a soft drink obviously, but whatever it is, but you as yourself is in calmest state as possible. Otherwise, don't actually have that conversation you're feeling uncomfortable with.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, and I think it's really important that you allow enough time. You don't actually know, in some of the cases that you're talking about, you might get dropped a bombshell or something you didn't know about. So you need to make sure that either side of the meeting, you leave a bit of a gap, so that if it overruns, you're okay. I think that's really important, because then you, again, like you said, you don't feel rushed. You don't feel like you're really on the spot and you need to finish it then and there. It's really important that you realize that this conversation is important to not just you, but the person that you're talking to as well.
So, I mean, I've been in many meetings, as I'm sure everyone else has, where there's other people in the meeting who want to say something, or they said they're going to say something, but then they never say it. And so, what is the advice on how to deal with those scenarios?
That is a good one. I used to do trade union rep, interestingly,
Okay.
and often people would say to me, "We want to bring this up and we want to bring this up," but they would never actually bring it up. So they would find me. So I had to be really clear on what my boundaries were. So if somebody's not going to bring it up, then there's not a lot you can do unless you're going to look at something. And I've had a recent case like this, where we knew there were issues that were brewing, but the person wasn't bringing it to the table. So what we've actually gone and done is an employee engagement survey, so that we get it out there and we can see what the overall view is. So sometimes you have to think creatively. Sometimes you have to think, am I actually coming across the right way? Do they feel safe opening up to me? And maybe that's the issue. A really good model to use to create psychological safety is the SCARF model.
Okay.
So there's the status, and that's about our importance to each other. So it's about making people feel valued and recognised. So, talking about their part of the team and how they contribute would sort of constitute that. Then you've got certainty. So that's about able to predict the future. So if somebody goes in and they feel like they're unsure and, God, where's this going? They're gonna really clam up. So you really need to make it as open and as honest as possible, in a way that they've got a voice too. And then you've got autonomy. So their sense of they've got control, because when we go into a meeting and we don't feel like we've got any control, we almost withdraw. And then relatedness. So if you can relate to each other better, then you start to build the trust. So it's thinking about how you can relate to each other. So you could say something like, if you're working on a project, you both want the same aim, you can bring that in, and that starts to bring in that relatedness. And then lastly, fairness. And this is a really good one for me, because this is one of my top values, is that fairness, that you're being fair to the person, you're being fair to both of you, you're being fair to the business. And you need to demonstrate that as well in the things that you say. And when you do that, you start to create that safety so people want to open up. And it's hard, you have to work at it. And you will get it wrong sometimes. I've been there. I've got conversations wrong. But as long as you learn from it, that's fine.
Okay, so I mean, from a business point of view, I can think of a number of people I've worked with, senior people in my time, who said, "Look, we're not social workers. We're in business. Just say what you're thinking, and look, we haven't got all this time for all this. Well, I know one would call it fluff. Just say it." What's your thought process with when you're working or you're communicating with someone like that?
So that's fair enough. I totally get it. They've got a business. At the end of the day, your goals, your vision, what you've got to achieve for the client is really important. But if you can relate the impact to what's happening in the business, in the team, with the client, then that's fine. That aid model will work exactly with that, because you're talking about purely the facts, you're taking the emotions out of it, and you're directing people to understanding why it needs to change by discussing the impact. And I think a lot of people don't discuss the impact. They don't talk about what the consequences are of their actions. And if we start talking about those, people become clearer and realize why.
Okay, so what we'll do is, for both Scarf and Aid, whatever platform you're listening to or watching this on, we'll put this down in the notes for you, so you can review it afterwards if you want to. But okay, so what is the business? I mean, we've talked about the person and people speaking out there, but what's the business benefits of actually going through this journey and ensuring we've got an environment where people can talk, or however you want to define that?
Yeah, well, if people aren't talking, they're usually in huddles, or they're usually talking behind closed doors, which affects team performance for a start. So stopping that in the tracks is really important. And in fact, I've got a video coming out shortly around this exact scenario, because I had a team member, a manager, who had her head down all the time and wasn't noticing that her team were actually in huddles complaining about everything. So we had to have a conversation around how she needed to deal with it. So you've got that for a start. You've got this thing around workplace tension and culture. So the atmosphere, when nothing is dealt with, becomes really toxic. And people then leave as a result. So you'll see a higher turnover when conversations aren't happening. And that's really important. You'll have higher sick absence as well. So it's really important that you look at what's going on in your business. Look at your retention, look at your sick absence, unexpected absence. What's going on? What's that telling you? And if you're seeing it's increased, then you need to do some work around it and find out what's going on.
Yes, this just reminds me of a podcast I did a few weeks ago with a lady called Sandy Goddard, who also, well, she was talking about the mission and the culture of a business. So it's different to what you're talking about, but actually they're really connected, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They are. And if things are left unresolved, then discontent happens, and people switch off. Quite a few years ago, I went into a GP's practice, and there were issues around that no conversations were happening, problems were being escalated and left, and nobody was talking about them. And all the employees felt devalued. And as a result of all of that going under the surface, what had happened was that they were near to closing down because they just weren't hitting their performance goals that they needed to hit. And it was, really serious stuff. So what we did was we painted the picture of what the ideal world looked like, where they were now, and what were the blockers, so we could start that conversation going and get them moving to where they needed to be. And a lot of it was around communication and conversations, and that was quite enlightening to see. And so they realised one of their things was that some people knew what was going on and other people didn't. So again, it goes back to communication and conversations.
So I think this is a great time, actually, therefore, just to talk about what support you can provide, because so far you've talked about helping people who've obviously come to you privately because they've got a scenario in workplaces. You've also talked about business owners who've come back to you to get support, and you've also talked about some group support there from your previous slides. So how do you support? What's the service you provide to help people with this, or companies?
So I have a variety of things. I have a Making Difficult Conversations Easier course, which comes with a membership for a year. So they get a monthly where they, like a surgery call, where they can come in and talk about the issues they're having. I have the Managers Academy, which is for new and accidental managers, particularly aimed at small employers who probably haven't got those resources in place. So it takes them on a journey of how to become that manager who gets the results that you want for the business, and also makes the manager feel with their well-being better. So I've got that. That's again a monthly membership, £17 at the moment. It will be going up, but at the moment that's where I'm keeping it for the next 3 months at least, because I want people in there, because my passion is just to help small employers grow and develop.
Let me so I know you've got other services there, Nicola, but let me just ask you about that. So let's pretend you're pushing your way up to a career and you've been very successful in whatever job you're doing, and then you become a manager. Now, becoming a manager is a very different place to not being a manager. So are you saying that subscription service you offer there, that if someone's becoming a manager and they just want someone who, I'm going to say, is totally third party, where you can just talk about your feelings, that's why you would join a group like that?
Yeah, it actually takes you through a journey of, say you were a small employer, you've just set up your business, you've decided to take on employees, or you've got some managers, you've just started and you've put a manager in place.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no, like you said, they've always done the actual job and not done the managing. What it does is it takes them on a journey about building their vision and their mission, the behaviors they expect, because it's really important that you get your expectations, your boundaries, and your values in very quick, so people know where they stand and know what's expected. So it starts you on that journey, and then it takes you into the realms of setting up training. And interestingly, a story for you today is, unfortunately, I've had a prang in my car. Well, I wasn't even in it. A coach hit it, but we won't go there. And so I took it into the body shop place to ask them for a quote. And the fella that we were waiting with was huffing and puffing and going on. It was a Monday morning. He'd just come back from a week's holiday, and he was really struggling with the workload he'd got. And he said, "Oh, that man over there, he can do some of it, but he can't do all of it. And that girl over there, she can't do any of it." So I gave him one of my valuable tips, which was about how to set up training so that you don't even have to do it as the person. You get somebody else doing it all, but they're doing it while they're learning on the job. And then you've got your processes written out. And it was quite funny because he just glazed over. And it was just like he wanted to stay in that victim mentality, which was really interesting to see. But for any normal employer who wants to make sure his business is running really, really well, he could use that section of the Managers Academy to get training up and in place. It's got about delegation, it's got about difficult conversations. And what also happens is that I've just upgraded the membership as well, so that they will get a fortnightly surgery call plus a monthly training call as groups. And that fortnightly one, they can come in, and if they're having a problem, we can discuss it. And then if I feel that there is a need and I'm seeing a recurrent problem, I will do additional training to go in the Managers Academy. So it's very much about, I've given them the basics, and then if I find they need anything else, here it is. I will do you something. And I do that with my one-to-one clients as well.
Sure. When you say come in, I'm assuming you mean, if you're not local to you, you can do a Zoom call or some kind of online call.
It's Zoom. It's all virtual.
Perfect.
And it's the surgery calls will be, they can come in if they want to. They don't have to. It's just a pop-in call. It'll just be open for an hour for anybody to come in.
Okay. And so they're the two, I'm going to say, ongoing courses, support networks you do. How else can people utilise and learn from you?
Okay, so I have a Catalyst conversation program, 3 sessions. The first one is DISC. So we do your DISC assessment, which tells us then what your strengths are, what your communication styles are, and then any blind spots that you're probably not aware of, or perhaps in some cases I see that they are perhaps aware but have not realised the impact it's having. And so it takes you through that journey, and then it also takes you through, we look at people that you're particularly reacting with and where we think they sit on the DISC profile, even though they haven't done the actual assessment. And then it shows you how to have conversations with them, how to build better working relationships with them. So that's how it starts. And then we then go through 2 further sessions looking at the conversations that people need to have and what they're struggling with. They get full structures, templates. And then, like, I've got one lady who's still working with me, and we've evolved from there. And we're now looking at things like a CV for a career. And we're looking at all the different conversations that she's having and what she's struggling with. And what I do in between is I'll perhaps record a little video and send it to her as a backup, because whenever we're in things, we never absorb all of it. So it's really important that there's some embedding afterwards.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. What does DISC stand for?
So DISC stands for 4 quadrants, where people can go into parts of them. I mean, often you'll find people have a bit in every of them, but they will be specific in one part. So there's dominance, influence, there's steadiness, and there's consciousness. Never can say that word. So, for example, I'm an IS, so I'm mainly influence, but I have a bit of steadiness. All right. So I'm really outgoing, I'm enthusiastic, I'm optimistic, I'm high spirited, and I'm lively. But I'm also a little bit patient. I think most of the time I am, even tempered. But so you'll get components. Sometimes you'll get the odd bit that comes in from others, and the reports I get tell me when it doesn't fit with the profile, and we'll discuss that as part of the session. It was interesting because I did this with my daughter, and we clashed quite a lot. And she was consciousness. Again, I'm not sure I'm saying this right, and she was analytical, reserved, precise, private, systematic, and that's exactly her. And so we were like at opposite ends. It's like, oh, now it makes sense. So having read how to handle her sort of personality, her behaviour, I am able to have better relationship with her.
So is a DISC done to learn how to, as you put it there, handle someone, or is it done that you can reflect on your own personality and highlight areas which either you are strong or weak at, and work on either controlling them or controlling them? Thinking about it.
I think it's about looking inward. It's about reflecting about yourself more than anything else, and then using it to learn. So, sometimes I will go through a DISC report with a client, and it will tell them things about themselves that they probably didn't know. And you can see almost it's a little bit of a shock. But then as we work through it, we find ways that we can accommodate this and what they need to do for going for the future. So one of the ones I work with was dominant. So she's very direct, firm, strong-willed. And what she hadn't realised was that her manager was more around the team working ethos. So he was more in influence, steadiness. And so her approach of her being direct and just getting on with it and not involving the team was really rankling with him. So when she understood that, she realised how she needed to adapt slightly. And she also realised on the opportunities that she was missing with the team. So that was a really great eye-opening for her.
Okay. So would you do a disc in recruitment?
You could do. They don't specifically do one for recruitment, but you could. What you could do is take the disc profile and look for the elements that you would like. It's interesting because I worked with one small employer who had all his team have a profile done, and they were all sat in the same place in the C area, and what he actually needed was more in all the way round because it was too much in one area. Because you need a balance. You always need a balance.
Okay, so just to do a recap, having difficult conversations is something we all need to manage, and the sooner we have them, the often the better it is. But if we are going to have them, what Nicola says, remember to breathe, which is somewhat important to all of us. So I would definitely be behind that as a way forward. But be in control. Consider who you're talking to, what's important to them, and do a disc type profile if you really want to understand what your strengths are and perhaps your weaknesses are, so you're just aware, and it makes you more conscious about what other people's characteristics will be like. But one thing I'm sure all our listeners can agree with is not having the conversation is far more damaging than anything else, because it's dangerous to businesses, it's dangerous to relationships, and it's dangerous to families. So I think Nicola and I will both do a shout out, have those conversations, but do it after controlled breathing and do it calmly. But the good news is that what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a webinar, so look out for that, where we'll be diving a little bit deeper into this subject. But meanwhile, our shameless plug time. So Nicola, how do people reach out to you if they would like some more advice on how to communicate?
Okay, so there's two ways, either LinkedIn, Nicola Richardson, the People Mentor, you'll find me under, or alternatively, the peoplementor.co.uk. And can I plug, please, for my podcast? Whilst I'm not putting any new episodes on currently, there are over 150 podcast episodes on, and you can find that under Nicola Richardson, the People Mentor. So it's particularly aimed at small employers.
Amazing. Yes, definitely need to check that one out. Okay, so this podcast, which is slightly younger than Nicola's, is brought to you by the Academy World. What we do is we support small to medium-sized enterprises, which whatever you want to do, if it's including processes, systems, being introduced to the right expert, but supporting businesses is what we do here. But meanwhile, thank you very much for listening today. We'll be putting the notes in whatever platform you are listening on or watching this on. Nicola, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about difficult conversations, which is my passion, I have to say.
Brilliant. Meanwhile, listeners, we will be talking to another expert next week. And until then, have a great week and look after yourselves. Goodbye now.